The beach is a wide place, and it can feel quiet even when it is open, even when the horizon keeps going and going. The sand rests where it is soft in some places, firm in others, and the shoreline holds a gentle edge where water arrives and then is gone again. There is nothing to solve here, nothing to finish, nothing that needs a fast thought. Only a simple scene, a broad stretch, a patient surface. The air sits close to the skin and the sound stays low, not asking for anything, not insisting on attention, just a steady presence, a consistent tone like a familiar room in the dark. A small detail can be enough. A faint sheen on wet sand, a pale shell half pressed into the surface, a piece of driftwood set down as if it chose that place. The mind can notice, and then let the noticing soften, and then let it drift. The beach can hold different hours without effort, different light without urgency. It can be the same place and still feel gently changed. Not in a way that demands tracking, not in a way that requires remembering. Just a slow shift of surface, a slow shift of tone. The documentary feeling settles in calm, observational, steady. No one is asking for a conclusion. No one is asking for a point. The scene is allowed to be simple, and the listener is allowed to be heavy and unhurried. The shoreline stays where it is, and the horizon stays where it is, and the sound stays where it is. And everything can continue on its own, without any help. Before dawn. Before dawn, the beach is mostly shadow, and the shapes are gentle and softened. The sand looks darker, more like a single surface than many grains. A long stretch of shore holds stillness, with only the faint suggestion of texture. Near the waterline, the sand is packed and quiet, and it holds a smooth finish, as if it has been pressed down carefully. A thin line of foam sits near the edge, and then thins out and becomes something else. A piece of driftwood rests above the wet edge, set slightly apart like a small boundary that does not need to be guarded. Its surface is pale in the low light, and the shape is simple, rounded at the ends, worn down without hurry. The air feels cool in a way that is not sharp, just clean, just open. The sound of the water is present, but not loud and not dramatic. It keeps a steady rhythm, and it does not speed up. A faint glimmer sits on the horizon, not bright, not fully formed. The sky holds a deep tone, and the sea holds a deeper one. Everything blends gently, and the line where they meet feels calm, like a soft sea. Time passes without being counted. The beach does not mark it with effort. The shore simply continues and continues. A small wave arrives and a small wave leaves. The foam makes a short lace pattern and then it flattens. The sand accepts it and then looks the same again. Nothing is required of the sea. The driftwood does not need to be moved. The shells do not need to be collected. The footprints that might exist do not need to be followed. The space can remain empty, and that emptiness is enough. The mind can rest on one detail, the curve of the shoreline, the darker band of wet sand, the quiet shine that comes and goes. Attention can narrow and then widen again. It can loosen and settle. The beach holds before dawn without effort. It holds the dim light and the cool air and the quiet horizon. And everything can keep happening in its own way, without any push, without any plan. There is a gentle steadiness here, a soft repetition, the same sound returning, the same edge of water returning. And the body can sink into that repetition, as if it has heard it for a long time, as if it does not need to listen closely anymore. The scene stays simple, the sand stays down, the sea stays out, the sky stays above, and the slow minutes pass and keep passing and keep passing. Sunrise. At sunrise, the beach begins to show its surfaces, not sharply, not all at once, just a gradual revealing of edges and gentle color. The wet sand near the waterline catches a low glow and reflects it softly. The reflection is not bright. It is muted like light seen through thin fabric. A shallow curve of shoreline holds the glow and lets it stretch out. A cluster of shells sits where the water has been small and pale. Some are half buried, some lie open side up. They do not appear arranged, and they do not need to be. They are simply there, resting in the sand as it rests. Further up, the sand is drier and the texture becomes more obvious. There are gentle ripples, small ridges, and shallow troughs. The patterns look patient and unbothered. A smooth slope rises toward low dunes, and the dunes hold still grasses that barely move. The sea stays steady. The sound remains low, continuous. A wave arrives without drama and then fades back. A thin fringe of foam forms at the edge, then breaks, then disappears into the surface. The sky shifts through quiet tones. The horizon line becomes easier to see. as if it is being traced lightly. A few distant shapes may sit far out, too small to matter, too far away to invite thought. They can remain distant, and that distance is restful. Time continues. It does not announce itself. The light changes a little, and then a little more. The beach receives it without reaction. The shells remain still. The driftwood remains still. The sand remains placed where it is. The scene has no instructions inside it. There is nothing to do with the sunrise. No need to interpret it. No need to name it. It can simply be a soft brightening, a calm widening of visibility. The mind can settle on the sound and let the sound fill the background. It can settle on the line where water meets sand and let that line be enough. It can settle on the gentle reflection and let that reflection blur. Breath stays quiet. Thoughts can thin out. The beach keeps its own pace. The sunrise does not rush. The morning does not demand productivity. It only offers a scene that continues and continues. A small wave arrives, then another. The foam repeats its brief pattern. The sand accepts it again. And the listener can accept the repeating softness and let it carry attention downward and lower and lower. Mid-morning. In mid-morning, the beach feels open and clear. The light is steadier now, but still gentle in tone. The shoreline looks longer, as if it extends beyond the edges of attention. A lifeguard stand sits up on the dry sand, quiet and unoccupied. Its shape is simple, a raised seat, a small platform, a ladder that goes nowhere in particular. It casts a mild shadow that rests beside it. The shadow does not need to be watched. It is only a darker patch on a larger surface. The sand around the stand is marked with faint lines, footprints softened by time wind lines that cross them lightly. Nothing is crisp. Everything is slightly blurred at the edges, as if the beach is always smoothing itself. Near the water, the wet sand holds a thin shine. The shine comes and goes as the water shifts. A gentle wave reaches forward, then releases. The foam lingers for a moment, then becomes clear water again. A few small pebbles sit near the shore, dark against the lighter sand. They look polished and still. They do not invite handling. They only exist as part of the surface. The sea holds a wide, calm plain with small textures on top, fine, moving lines that do not need to be followed. The horizon remains steady. The sky remains broad. The entire scene feels like a quiet room made of light. Time passes in a slow stretch. The mind does not have to measure it. It can simply notice the repetition, the water arriving, the water leaving. It can notice the soft changes in reflections, the way the shore darkens briefly, then lightens again. There is no urgency in the lifeguard stand. It does not signal anything that must happen. It is only a shape against the sand, a familiar object, a piece of beach architecture that sits still. The air carries a faint salt presence. It is not strong. It is just there, like a trace. And the sound continues steady and low. Thoughts can rise and fall without being held. They can appear, then fade. The beach remains unchanged by them. The sea continues. The sand continues. The light continues. The listener can rest in the neutrality of the sea. Nothing is exciting. Nothing is troubling. The waves do not build to anything. They simply repeat. The shadow by the stand remains soft. The footprints remain softened. The pebbles remain in place. The beach holds mid-morning in a calm way. It is simply a wide surface with a few objects resting on it. And time moves through the scene without asking permission and without requiring attention. The sound stays even. The horizon stays stable. And the mind can sink into the steadiness and loosen further and loosen further. Noon. At noon, the beach is bright in a quiet way. The light spreads evenly without sharp corners. The sand appears pale and the small grains blend into a single field. A long stretch of shoreline lies open. The water looks clearer near the edge, then deepens in color farther out. The difference is gentle, a smooth gradient that does not need to be named. A small mound of sand sits near the dry zone, as if it was formed and then left alone. Its surface is slightly cracked and slightly rounded. A few shells are pressed into it, partly visible, partly hidden. They stay in that half state, not fully revealed, not fully covered. The sea keeps its repeating motion. A wave arrives and spreads thinly. The foam makes a brief white edge, then breaks apart. The water slides back, leaving the sand darker for a moment. Then the darker patch fades into the larger pale field. A piece of seagrass lies in a curve thin and dark. It rests as lightly as a line drawn on paper. It does not move much. It does not need to. The sky at noon is wide. The horizon remains steady. If there are distant points far out, they remain too small to matter. They can be ignored without effort. Time passes. The brightness does not change quickly. The scene feels steady, almost static. The only consistent movement is the water, and even that movement is repetitive, predictable in its return. There is nothing here that requires interpretation. A mound of sand can simply be a mound of sand. A shell can simply be a shell. A curve of seagrass can simply be a curve. The beach does not ask for analysis. It offers surfaces and sound and steady light. The listener can rest on the edge where water meets sand. That edge redraws itself again and again. It is never exact, and it never needs to be. It is a gentle boundary that keeps changing without consequence. Breath remains quiet. The body can feel heavier. The mind can follow the rhythm of the water without effort. Arriving, spreading, releasing. Arriving, spreading, releasing. Noon can feel like an extended pause, not an empty pause, just a pause that contains simple repetition. The sand holds its warmth silently. The water holds its cool surface silently. And the sound continues to wash over everything, soft, even, and uninsistent. The scene stays neutral. Nothing becomes urgent. Nothing needs to be finished. The beach continues to be a place where time passes slowly, and the listener can let time pass with it and sink gently into that passing. Early afternoon. In early afternoon, the beach keeps its wide stillness. The light remains steady, but it begins to feel slightly softer at the edges. Shadows appear a little longer, though still mild and calm. A wooden walkway meets the sand boards leading out from behind the dunes. The boards are pale and worn. Their lines repeat, one plank after another. The repetition is quiet and familiar. At the end of the walkway, the sand begins again, open and uninterrupted. Beside the walkway, a small clump of dune grass leans gently. The blades are thin and the color is muted. They do not draw attention for long. They can be noticed and then released from thought. The sand near the walkway shows faint impressions, marks that are already softening. No single mark needs to be followed. They can remain as texture. They can remain as a suggestion of passage without any story attached. The shoreline continues its slow work. A wave comes in and spreads. A thin reflection appears, then fades. The water retreats, and the sand returns to its previous look. A small stone sits partly buried. Its top surface catches a dull glint. It is neither important nor insignificant. It is simply one more object resting where it is. Time moves through early afternoon with quiet consistency. Nothing in the scene changes dramatically. The sea keeps repeating. The horizon keeps its line. The walkway keeps its straight boards. The listener can let attention rest on the boards for a moment. The lines are simple. They do not branch. They do not become complex. They only continue until they end, and then the sand begins. That simplicity can be calming and effortless to hold. The sound of the water remains present. It fills the background without asking to be foreground. It stays like a steady layer, like a soft fabric laid over the scene. Thoughts can drift like small clouds that do not develop. They can pass through the mind without becoming anything. The body can feel supported by the steadiness. The beach does not change to match any thought. It remains neutral and it remains calm. The dune grass remains where it is. The stone remains where it is. The walkway remains where it is. The shoreline keeps arriving and releasing, arriving and releasing. There is nothing to do with the scene, no decision inside it, no demand to understand it. Only a gentle environment that continues at its own pace, and the listener can continue with it. Without effort, without strain, settling deeper into the quiet repetition of walls, sand, water, and the long flat horizon. Late afternoon. In late afternoon, the light begins to tilt gently. The beach looks warmer, not bright in the same way, more amber, more soft. A simple beach chair sits empty on the dry sand, folded slightly as if it has been set down and forgotten. The fabric is dull, not vivid. The frame makes a calm outline. A shadow rests beneath it, longer, now still quiet. Nearby, a small pile of shells lies in a shallow depression. The shells are mixed, some smooth, some broken. They catch a little light on their edges. They do not glitter. They only hold a faint highlight. The shoreline remains consistent. The water arrives and spreads thinly. The foam breaks into small patches, then disappears. The wet sand reflects the warm sky for a moment, then returns to a darker tone. The sea farther out looks calm from this distance. Its surface holds tiny moving lines. Those lines do not need to be tracked. They can be seen as texture and then allowed to blur. Late afternoon carries a sense of slowing without needing to announce it. The scene does not change quickly. The chair remains empty. The shelves remain in place. The horizon remains steady. Time feels stretched. A minute can feel like a long, soft ribbon. The sound of the water repeats at the same pace. The repetition can become background music, steady and simple. The mind can stop trying to organize it. It can simply let the sound pass through. The chair is an easy object to rest attention on. It is still. It holds its shape. It does not require meaning. It simply exists as part of the beach surface. A quiet piece of furniture out in the open, doing nothing. The warm light rests on the sand in wide areas. It makes the grain texture visible, but not sharp. The sand remains a single field with small variations that do not matter. The listener can feel the calm neutrality in the scene. Nothing is urgent. Nothing is missing. Nothing needs to be corrected. The chair can stay empty. The shells can stay scattered. The waves can keep arriving and leaving without ceremony. A wave comes in, then another. The foam repeats its brief edge. The water retreats. The sand smooths itself again. And the mind can smooth itself in the same way, letting thoughts flatten, letting attention soften, settling into the long, gentle warmth of late afternoon by the sea, sunset and dusk. At sunset, the beach begins to dim in a gradual way. The colors soften and the edges lose sharpness. The horizon holds a band of warmer tone, and the sea takes on deeper shades. A pier extends out over the water, wooden posts in a repeating line. The posts cast long shadows across the surface. The shadows are calm and steady. The pier does not move. It simply reaches out and remains. Under the pier, the water shifts slowly. Reflections form and break. Light and dark trade places gently. Nothing becomes bright. Nothing becomes stark. It is all muted and easy to look at without effort. On the sand, small ridges become less visible. The surface turns into a broad smoothness again. A few scattered shells are faintly visible, pale shapes against darker sand. They feel farther away now, even when they are close. The sound of the waves continues in the same way. The sea does not change its rhythm for the sunset. It remains consistent, arriving, spreading, releasing. The foam is less visible, but it is still there for a moment, then gone. Dusk arrives without a clear boundary. The sky grows darker by degrees. The pier becomes a stronger silhouette. The posts become simple, dark vertical lines. The horizon remains a calm seam. Time passes slowly through the fading light. The mind does not need to hold on to what it saw earlier. It does not need to compare. It does not need to store details. The scene is allowed to dissolve gently, and attention is allowed to dissolve with it. The pier is a steady presence, a repeating structure post after post. That repetition is soothing. It suggests continuity without demanding a story. It suggests steadiness without any effort. The water under the pier keeps shifting. Reflections slide and blur. A small wave reaches the sand and then releases. The wet edge darkens, then lightens again as it dries. Dusk continues. The beach becomes quieter in its visuals, not quieter in sound. The sound stays steady. But the scene becomes simpler, reduced to large shapes, large areas of tone. Nothing needs to be done with this simplicity. The pier can remain a silhouette. The sea can remain a dark plain. The sky can remain a soft gradient fading toward night. And the listener can rest inside that dimming, letting the mind become less detailed, less focused, more heavy, more calm, as the beach holds the last light without any urgency. Night. At night, the beach becomes a quiet composition of dark surfaces. The sand is mostly shadow, and the sea is a deeper shadow. The horizon is still there, but it is subtle, like a line drawn with very little pressure. A small lantern sits on the sand near a piece of driftwood, its light low, warm, contained. The lantern does not brighten the whole beach. It only makes a small circle of visibility. Inside that circle, the sand grains become visible again, soft and close. Outside the circle, everything returns to darkness. The driftwood beside the lantern is pale in the warm light. Its surface looks smooth, rounded, quiet. It casts a short shadow that stays close, as if it does not want to travel far. The sea continues its steady motion. The sound is the same sound it has been. It does not change at night. A wave arrives and the edge of water moves forward. The foam is mostly hidden now, but the movement is still there. The water retreats and the sand remains. Far out, a few tiny points of light may sit along the horizon. They are distant, small, unimportant. They do not invite interpretation. They can be treated like stars that chose to be lower and then ignored again. The lantern light remains steady. It does not flicker dramatically. It simply glows. The warm circle on the sand stays in place. The driftwood stays in place. The entire scene is still, except for the repeating water. Night makes the beach feel like a quiet room, open but contained by darkness. The mind can rest in the smaller field of attention. The lantern, the sand within the circle, the driftwood edge. These are enough. Time passes without being tracked. The sound of the waves can become a blanket, a consistent layer, not a signal, not a message. Only a gentle pattern repeating. Thoughts can slow down. They can become less complete. They can arrive as fragments and then fade. The beach does not ask the mind to finish them. The sea does not ask the mind to hold on. The lantern continues to glow. The sand continues to hold its small grains in place. The water continues to arrive and release. Arriving, releasing, arriving, releasing. Nothing is required. Nothing is urgent. Nothing needs to be understood. The night beach can simply exist as dark, warm light, steady sound, and a horizon that stays where it is. And the listener can let the mind sink lower and lower until even the lantern circle feels distant and the sound becomes the only gentle presence. And then even the sound can blur into quiet rest. The beach remains a wide place, even when it is barely seen. The sand remains down, the water remains out, the sky remains above. The sound continues in its calm way, arriving, spreading, releasing, arriving, spreading, releasing. No part of the scene asks for effort. No part of the scene needs a response. The objects stay where they are. The driftwood, the shells, the pier, the chair, the walkway, the lantern light. They can all remain exactly as they are. The mind can let go of holding details. It can let the beach become one simple atmosphere. Darkness, soft warmth, steady sound. A horizon that does not move, and a shoreline that redraws itself gently, again and again. Breath can remain quiet. The body can remain heavy. The thoughts can remain unfinished and unimportant. Nothing needs to be resolved. Nothing needs to be carried forward. The beach continues without help. The water continues without help. And the listener can rest without effort, settling into the steady repetition and letting the scene fade and fade and fade.